Hello, and welcome to another wonderful episode of Submitted for Your Approval, our weekly card review show for Collective, the community-created card game. I'm Strangerside, your host. I'm joined today by my faithful co-host, Grief. Say hi, Grief.
Howdy, folks. A little bit tired, but, well, whatever.
Oh, yeah, this is the tired episode. I think we're all tired today. What about you, Empty?
Oh, I'm always tired.
Yeah, so we're all tired today. So forgive us. We're just going to do some totally just slapdash, hastily put together episode, like we normally do. Let's start with the accepted submissions. The one I wanted to talk about today was Devouring Leviathan is an 8-cost neutral 4/4 fish from Garmol, Land of Frost and Fire. Untargetable and summon, destroy a unit, gain its stats and keywords. Assimilating Gloop has grown up, people. And we have a grown-up assimilating Gloop now. So what is this? Garmol has a couple main things going on the surface with these warring factions. Some of these cards we're going to get into later today. But the other sub-theme they have is these big leviathans that are kind of like under the in the water. And their theme is they're just big splashy neutral units. This is one of them. So you get an untargetable removal that steals stats, steals keywords. This is interesting, and this is a potentially good top end. So obviously, Feed the Flames, any sort of board wipe is going to be able to counter it, but the combination of untargetable and probably a good stolen keyword or two is going to keep this from getting removed pretty much any other way. So this is, I think, a really good finisher. What do you think, Grief?
I think it's pretty much fine. It would probably see occasional play in standard when it comes to unit-based control for bands or something to put on the board, similar to assimilating way back in the olden age of standard. In terms of legacy, I could see this being used in butcher decks due to the fact that you can actually get two versions of it, halve its stats and its costs, and therefore gain very good, efficient removal on a stick.
Yeah. With Butcher, this is pretty nuts, honestly. What do you think, Empty?
I think it's all right. I think the main issue is that you're relying so much on your opponent having something good to steal. So if you're running into like a lot of aggro and mid-range decks, even if you do get to 8 mana, this isn't going to be very effective because they're not going to have anything big enough to make this like an actual threat.
Yeah, see, my thought with this, and this is probably kind of weird, is maybe using this as kind of a top end for food, if you could find a way to get in a cheap unblockable unit and then just absorbing your own unit as a backup plan. But that's probably a little crazy. Anything, if you got one unblockable unit flying around as sort of a backup plan for this, I think it could still work as a top end.
I mean, it only gives you a 4/4 boost, though. Like, you're better off just running equipment.
Oh, yeah, good point. Yeah, so, but I'm saying like as a backup plan. But yeah, I see what you mean. It's very matchup dependent. You're doing a lot better, obviously, if you can get one of your opponent's units. Mr. Figaro the Villain is a 3-drop spirit 2/4 robot bard from Concierta with summon, create, go with the flow in hand. And when the opponent draws a card, they lose 1 HP and you gain 1 HP. Go with the flow says choose a card in your opponent's hand to shuffle into deck. They draw a card and create a copy of this. So this is from Concierta Music World. It's got this beautiful pop art style thing from Spikebird. I absolutely love the background here with like the comic book type style. So the idea here is that go with the flow is you guys can pass this back and forth to do sort of this control oriented thing, or perhaps you just use it once to get a little bit of a drain in, but it creates a lot of really interesting stuff in the matchup where you're wondering how much are you guys really going to be focusing on controlling your opponent's hand, knowing that Figaro's still out. When Figaro goes away, it gets more interesting. We've actually talked about this card before, but now it's in. Notably, since this thing came up first, is Impatient. So you can use this to, if you drop this first and then Impatient, you can use it to lock it down. And there's probably some other cool uses for this. What do you think, Empty?
Oh yeah, I really like this card. it fits perfectly into this sort of hand lock style deck where you run Thought Suppressor and this, and then you have multiple triggers every time your opponent draws a card. And then Go with the Flow is just another great option for that deck. It lets you filter your opponent's hand for removal and forces a draw, which will trigger all of your other draw trigger units. I think it's a really cool card, and I hope eventually that deck will see the light of day.
Yeah, so, well, in Legacy, I know we have some more of those tools already. We have stuff like Binding Magician and stuff. So, Grief, do you think this is going to create a particularly impressive and oppressive combo in the Legacy pool?
Not really oppressive or combo in that regard. It just fits right into the deck that you actually just pointed out. Binding Magician, Shuffle Hot Sauce, any kind of interaction with multiple discard engines like the Lost Lurker and stuff like that. So you just fit him right into there and basically wreak havoc on the hand of your opponent.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think this could be potentially really fun to play and potentially very frustrating to play against. But it'll be interesting to see what we end up doing with it. Now let's talk about Crystal Combustion. Crystal Combustion is a 7-drop mind action from nowhere in particular. Deal 12 damage to an enemy unit, then randomly split the excess damage among all enemy units. So, wow. Actually, I wanted to have Grief start with this one because you want to talk to us about where this stands in relation to like earlier stuff we've had that are stuff like Incendium and whether or not do you think this is Incendium in standard or?
No, really. This is more One Combustion's weird little cousin.
Older brother.
Oh, nah. One Combustion has a predictable pattern. This does not.
Yeah.
Depending on the board state, this can be a very good single target removal, or help you out to basically kill the entire aggro board, since you just need to hit a singular 1 HP unit, and the rest of the 11 damage will be spread around only the board. So you don't really have the problem of hitting the opponent's face. On the other hand, if this would be able to hit the opponent's face, any kind of very small board would be also face burn. So that's a kind of balancing act that they go in for in this case.
Yeah.
I cannot really complain about that card. It's probably even legacy playable in terms of board wipe-ish range effects that help you basically manage the opponent's board. But we have probably more efficient and lower curve options for that already.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Where it's kind of in Legacy, at least, it doesn't really have a niche. What do you think about this, Empty?
I can't stand this card. It's kind of well known at this point that I don't like One Combustion, and this just has all the same problems as One Combustion to me. Actually, it's not quite as bad because it's like the high cost, but there's so many situations where this is just a one-sided board clear, and it takes all like the interesting things that make playing against board clears like fun. It just takes those away because it's one-sided, so it doesn't like your opponent doesn't need to play around like how much of a board they have and whether it's not worth it or not. They just always throw this out because it's always going to be good.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So sort of like a cost comparison. I think in Magic you can get this effect at like 9. So
I mean that's just straight up destroy everything. This isn't like it's not guaranteed.
Well, yeah, but you could get
mid-range.
straight out destroy at 9. So you could this I think makes sense at 7, but I could see maybe there's 2 knobs to twist if it ever does need to see an update, so I'm not too scared, but we'll see. Yeah, let's get into the heart of the issue, guys. Let's get into the active submissions. Starting with Devourer of Words is a 5-drop mind 1/3 goblin from Perotis, which we haven't seen much from them recently. With summon, silence all other units. This gets +1 attack for each unit silenced. So for those of you who never really caught on, Perotis is supposed to be a realm with these quirky, referential, in-joke cards that are like parodies of existing cards. This one, funnily enough, is parodying Devourer of Worlds, which already has a parody in Nibbler of Worlds. But now we got this thing. I think it's actually pretty interesting. A lot of people went around comparing this to a baby version of King of Tall Tales, in that it's sort of gets you most of that effect earlier. Of course, this is like you talked about, the interestingness with the two-sidedness. This also hits all your stuff, so you got to think carefully about what you're doing. And it's a vanilla unit to start with, so interesting way to reset the board, definitely. Grief, what do you think of this?
This is nowhere near a vanilla unit in terms of stats.
Well, no, but I'm saying when it's done, it doesn't have any keywords. So you could just still block it.
Yeah, the thing is, the comparison with King of Tall Tales is a little bit iffy, considering that King of Tall Tales actually gains relevant effects.
Yeah.
This is Iconoclasm on a stick.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
It's not a bad card, but paying 5 mana to basically blank a board is very, very matchup / meta dependent, because the most powerful effects that we can have on a board usually come from summons.
Yeah.
Or entrance abilities. It's rather rare that we actually have very important actives that we want to hit. And the only real effect that we want to blank with this is stuff like Duelist and the occasional burn active.
So Dunewalkers, obviously, this is a great play against Dunewalkers, because they have a lot of actually passive effects they need to keep alive.
Then again, there's another little problem when you come to Dunewalkers, because they have an innate ward effect.
Yeah.
And silence doesn't bypass ward.
Yeah. Well, ward bug bypasses ward. No, but yeah, you're right. That I think the only deck this really works particularly well against already has some form of protection against it that might be potent enough. Might be. But it depends on kind of when you get your apprentice down. And so this might be a little bit too matchup dependent. Despite all that, it's actually sitting at like 18. So probably because Hanoi put just so much love and care into the art, even though people were ribbing him for it, which I don't understand why. Like, that was ridiculous. Empty, go.
Yeah, I mean, it's a full board silence. I think it's good to have at least one of those effects in standard at this sort of cost. It's just going to be like a meta dependent card. Like, for example, if oozes become really popular,
Yeah,
this really shuts those down, stuff like that. So
the Rotten Blossom is a 4-drop spirit 2/3 ooze from Mortstall, Realm of the Dead Things, with an ambush and entomb. This permanently gains your oozes have +1/+1 while this is in the graveyard. So this is actually not a cornmeal design, it's a cornmeal art, it's a Blopka design. And there is the potential issue, I guess, of interacting with players who are maybe newer to the game and get confused if they weren't reading this too carefully when they're like, oh, this is a lord from beyond the grave. I do really, really like all the synergies with this. And I think this is a very creative sort of idea for oozes. Because obviously the entomb thing and the problem with like running self-sack entombs is you're losing resources. And this just converts one resource to another. So this combined with Mortar Mockery, combined with any of the other sort of ooze, entomb copying stuff we've seen before, can make it so your oozes permanently just hit with bigger, with a bigger stat block. So this creates some pretty strong inevitability that can only be answered by Graveyard Hate, which creates a play pattern I'm halfway's not sure I like, but I'm halfway's kind of excited to see how it would play out. Empty, what do you think?
really interesting card. I think the main weakness of this is like just how bad this becomes when you're behind, because its base stats are just awful.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a way to remove this yourself, it's not really threatening any damage, so your opponent doesn't have to remove it. They could just take the hits for a few turns, and then you're not really getting the value out of it. Against like aggro and mid-range decks that have to push for damage, though, this is going to be great because it has ambush, and then you can do like a thing where if this dies mid-combat, you like buff up your whole board mid-combat as well, which is really interesting.
Yeah, so it does have that sort of initiative dependence. Yeah.
Yeah. Overall, I think this is a really good design for an ooze board. It really plays into their theme well.
Yeah. Yeah, my only real concerns are like interactability and maybe a little bit of comprehension difficulty with like players who aren't reading very carefully and just wondering why are all of his oozes so big. Grief, what do you think?
Not really too impressed due to the initial cost of 4 mana. Because this thing has to particularly die to get off the Entomb. So, yeah, sure, it's an ambush and you're basically just playing it to particularly block and die in certain sequences, but on the other hand, if this thing gets bounced or doesn't really kill itself in that particular instance, or the Entomb isn't copied in any shape or form, you're just having a 4-cost dead card. In addition to that, for Legacy, this is way too slow for anything, shape or form. Short Summer, this should have costed 3, and then it would have been fine because you cannot discard it for its benefits.
Yeah.
Okay, you can potentially Grave Rave it to get 2 instances of that effect and maybe play Mord Mockery and whatever, but that's very high investment for something that needs a board to begin with, which usually develops quite late for Ooze Tribal, starting for like turn 4 to 5, where their board actually becomes strong enough to capitalize on certain effects like Rotten Blossom.
Yeah. I agree with most of that assessment. This would be particularly interesting in maybe a slower game with stuff like maybe running Essence Shifter and like About to Snap or Bully the Kindling and trying to find a way to force them to get attacks off. But that's probably way in a crazy single player lane. But
yeah,
I don't know. Could be fun. It'd be nice if we got more off-color oozes for that, but I like what Cornelius doing, and now I guess Blavka. Shrine of the Damned. Let's talk about a designer. More designers we haven't talked about in a while. Is a 2-drop Spirit 0/4 artifact placed from nowhere in particular with active. Pay 1 mana, move a unit in your graveyard to hand, permanently give it flying and life bond. Okay, so guys, I think this design is super cute, and I think it's super sad for a couple different reasons. The biggest one being it's called Shrine of the Damned, and it appears to make angels. Like, what? The vibe I'm getting off of it,
aren't you, wait a second, aren't you getting the reference in the art?
No, I'm not. What is it? Explain it to me.
This is Ghostwing, you idiot.
Oh, it's Aethera? Or
it's the ghost-winged angel with a corpse, I'm dying. The flavor stickler didn't get reference.
I didn't catch the reference. Yeah. Okay, so that part was missed on me, but I mean, besides that, just the whole. Yeah, I do like the whole reanimator here. This is a fun reanimator effect. It's interesting. It's mostly just I guess I just didn't get the reference there. But it's really cute. Of course, I'm the guy behind the burial site, so I'm a big fan of stuff like this. Especially because this at a premium of just 1 mana, comparing it to a burial site, lets you pick what unit you get, and you can get anything. It just goes to hand instead, but it comes back better. Gives you a lot of reach and a lot of potential to gain your life back. Empty, what do you think of this?
I'm surprised you didn't bring up Spirit Flying.
I was gonna, I didn't, I held my tongue. Well, because Reanimator's only in really 2 affinities, and this is kind of weird for a strength Reanimator, so I kind of get it reluctantly, but yeah, I also didn't like that.
I mean, yeah, it does let you get flying blockers. I don't have too much to say about it. It's a fairly simple design. Just, bring your stuff back. Very value oriented.
Well, yeah, but it's as it stands. This is, I think, this is the only reanimator engine we've seen in standard, and one of the only ones in the game. If you really want to find other reanimator engines, you have to look all the way back to like Mementa and and Burial Site, but like there's not a lot of like recurring reanimator in this game. I could count on like both hands. So
I think this will be pretty good in the current meta, because we sort of have like a value oriented control meta with a lot of essence shifter decks floating around.
Yeah, Grief, what do you think?
It's a fine card. Problem is though, what are your best targets for it? When you drop this turn 2, there's nothing in your graveyard.
No, my Bursting Blight's in my graveyard. And I use it to get all my 1-drops. Because it flies now. Yeah, I see your point. It's not a 2-drop for turn 2.
And 3, similar issue. Basically, this is a 2-cost unit with an active that costs you 1 mana that you probably don't play sooner than turn 4 to 5.
Yeah.
Depending on the value that you want to get out of the targets.
Well, but that lets me get my Rock Slide out or whatever on that turn, and I don't know. Something.
It's a peculiar card, but I'm still pretty much missing the use case for it. And I think many people seem to agree on that, because I don't think it's doing particularly well.
Yeah, it's sitting at like 3. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm thinking when I look at this card. I have a card that's a good value card that's problem is it doesn't have evasion, right? So just good stats for the cost. That thing's gonna die. I want to bring it back in a way where it can actually start paying dividends for me, and that's what I use this for. Or I have an untargetable unit, and I want to bring it back with evasion, something like that.
Yeah, it is really slow.
Yeah.
And there's also like there's a lot of brick, but there's also a lot of ash, and against ash, this is really a dead card.
Yeah.
Like you do get life bomb, which is really nice. It's just like so slow to get there, and you're paying so much extra mana for it. I don't know.
What this is kind of screaming for, and just sadly doesn't exist in the game as it is something like just a really, really solid vanilla unit that's just got great stats for its cost. If we had one of those lying around, this would actually be good.
What this card more or less screams, I'm part of I have an effect that would work better if our card game had instant speed.
Yeah.
Where you would actually have a unit that dies in combat, pop this effect, bring it back at end of turn to your hand. You can actually utilize it next turn.
Oh yeah, second main phase.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's in a weird spot. I'd like to see it do better. I'm gonna actually look up, figure out what on earth it was doing flavor wise. The Envious Prophet is a 1-drop spirit 0/3 herring cultist from Xandar. With at the start of the turn, copy the HP of the highest HP unit. So this is interesting. It's pretty actually. Deece is just a vanilla, but of course it's just sitting around trying to be a blocker, and it doesn't have ambush. But what does this ability do? This lets you copy the HP of the highest HP unit. So the idea behind this was that Magnetar wanted the hearing to focus on high HP matters, and this was supposed to be a way to prop Dad up, which I know Dad has been in a spot where he's really, really hard to do much with. This does help any of the other herring shenanigans with high HP matters, but I don't know if it goes far enough in actually filling a useful niche, except maybe just soaking a bunch of aggro with pseudo regenerate. So, Empty, what do you think?
I think it just soaks a bunch of damage, and then as Dot, you get your early XP procs. Although I don't even really think that's that much of a problem for Dot right now.
Yeah.
It's all right. I don't really see how like this whole I've seen quite a few of these gearing cards. I'm not really sure what the game plan is supposed to look like. Like they have this high HP synergy thing, but you really don't want to be stacking all your buffs onto one unit, especially if it ends up being something like this, where this ends up with the highest HP, and that's a really bad thing because you don't want to be stacking buffs onto an O3.
Yeah. Am I crazy for wishing it actually had at least 1 point of attack?
No, not at all.
Yeah, like with at least 1 point of attack, I think it would do so much better against aggro. Even if it was a 1-2, because like you said, Dat has a means to get that early proc, that he could just get this down on turn 1. You probably don't have a 1-drop 1-2. Maybe if you're running the 1 in Dunewalkers. But then next turn, I'm going to drop something that's got more HP. I'm going to have 2 things that got HP, and I'm going to have this one that has this pseudo-regenerate ability that lets me soak lots and lots of chumps. Grief, what do you think of this?
It's so terrible.
Like, I don't think that.
Oh, this card is so freaking terrible. I mean, okay, you've basically mentioned the support for Dart. Folks out there, here is a bombshell. Newsflash, Dart is probably the easiest to design hero. The easiest hero to design cards for. Why is that? Because it cares about 2 things. A board with good control units that have high HP. This basically does nothing. This doesn't provide a good control board and doesn't really provide the highest HP because it copies the highest HP unit.
Well, the idea is redundancy, right?
The thing is, though, what does the redundancy do if the unit itself doesn't actually have a use in the first place?
I just thought of something, though. If you're in a dot mirror and you have this out, you will always match your opponent's highest HP unit, and they'll never get their XP prop.
Yeah.
The dot counterattack. Oh no, gotta stop Dot's powerful level ups and XP growth.
That's the next thing. Dart doesn't really want to copy the highest HP unit. He wants to control it in the first place.
Someone brought up the idea, and I think this was probably the way to go with this. If you don't want to give it the one attack, which it could maybe use, is making it 1 higher than the highest HP, right? So then it has the regen, it has the growth, and it secures you a dot proc.
Wait,
unless you have to use it as a blocker.
That makes it actually pretty strong. Because then it just passively gains HP on its own.
Yeah.
At start of turn, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful about thinking about, oh, am I going to use this as a blocker? It creates some interesting play patterns. So yeah, I think this definitely needs something to kind of shake it from where it's at. It's actually at 11, so maybe we're just whining. But to make it actually see use, I do think it would need to either make it 1 higher than the highest, or, and I know it's weird, but it needs a point of attack so it can do something against the board other than just sit there and just block and regenerate itself.
This is such a terrible card.
I believe it's not past redemption, but maybe that's just me.
No, it's not past redemption, but it's utterly terrible.
Rose, the Immortal AI, is a 6-drop strength 4/6 vampire robot from Mortstall, Realm of the Dead Things, with life bond, agile, and when you gain life, the opponent loses 2 HP. And Entomb, sacrifice a unit to create a copy of this. So apparently Sporium's love for immortal units has begun to permeate out, and now Super Sun is taking a shot at this. We're giving rise to units that can never die, man. So as a Lord effect, what is, or as a like a pilot for an important piece in a vampire deck, this says, go ahead and block me. Even if you block me, I am going to come back, or I'm going to make sure you suffer for it. And it also has potential to work really interestingly with like multi-blocks, or just any way you have to gain small amounts of HP in installations. So the crazy thought with this would be Pomegranate with Essence Shifter, because if you can proc Pomegranate once, then you'll be bleeding them for 8, which is kind of nice. But if you're looking just for a straightforward thing for vampires, it's kind of a little late in the game, but it might be a good top end. Grief, what do you think of this?
Listen, vampires are pretty much heavily reliant on sacrificing, partially heralding, and life bond as a positive interaction to grow their forces, especially in Legacy. But what they don't really do is incremental life gain outside of combat.
Well, yeah. I'm just saying if you want to find a way to bust that second ability. So you can use it for just a little bit.
Then the thing is, you're not playing this in vampires, but on plants to begin with.
Yeah. I'm saying this works in plants, which is pretty interesting, I think. I don't know.
The thing is, if you actually want to build, the thing is, you don't really build it for the incremental life gain effect outside of combat. Yeah. It's just the top end where you attack and basically burst your opponent for 8 damage passively because their water is a life bond. That's it. The more important part is actually a sacrifice thing, because it's a life drain engine that doesn't go away.
Yeah.
That's the actual important part about that first effect. The incremental life gain effect wouldn't be so much of an issue or a good part if the safety valve didn't exist to begin with, because you can actually trigger synergies off of it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think this is super interesting. I'm eager to see what could really be done with it. This actually makes me want to pick up my old vampire deck again, and play with it, and maybe see what I can do with some new other stuff going on. Of course, Essence Shifter that I just mentioned has a pretty maybe aggressive nerf that's on the table.
No, that's probably not happening because that nerf is bullshit.
Okay.
I mean, it has what, maximum of 3 upvotes?
Okay. Yeah, Mystic kind of just posted it randomly.
What?
Oh, no. I was there for the discussion. It was not random, but I was maybe questioning if it was harsh. I thought it was maybe okay, but
not at all.
Empty. Go. Tell me about Rose. What do you think of our robo waifu, vampire waifu?
Please don't say that word again.
I mean, it sort of just plays into the problem that vampires already have, which is that they haven't been able to get a replacement for Glowstone Mine, and so they just don't have enough sack outlets. And this is just like a top end that also relies on sack outlets, which is probably at the point in the game where you're not going to have as many. I mean, it could be quite strong. Like, when vampires were in their heyday, I think this would have been an amazing card for them. But right now, they're in such an awkward spot that I don't see it seeing too much play.
Yeah.
The thing with this card is, this is a combat-focused Crimson Dancer. Yeah. Let's be honest. Crimson Dancer's plan was usually go face with your board, that if you don't sacrifice it, it will die and you will proc the life drain effects, which can also proc the effect of Wayne Reaver. This is just a more aggressive version of it, because you didn't really want to go in combat with your Crimson Dancer this once.
Yeah. I think it could be a needed tool. I do agree with what you said, Empty, that they need fodder units and they just don't have them yet. But we'll see. Simta, the Warped Order, is an 8-drop neutral 6/6 Titan from HPL with flying, and summon, draw 2 units. If you can't, create 2 silence copies of this. And when you draw a unit, create a 1/1 copy of it and play. So this is basal, but for every tribe. This is interesting. It reminds me of Regretful Chopper, but I guess it's when you draw. So it has Butcher vibes. It has Regretful Chopper vibes, and it works in kind of anything. And of course, it's a big, scary 6/6 Titan thingy. We need new Titans in HPL flavor-wise because that's kind of their blood and bones. Is they have creepy things, and those creepy things go do things, and that's what makes HPL work and be interesting. Is the horrors. As far as the actual flavor of this one, I think it's I can actually finally read the art. It's been a while since I've been able to really understand what's going on in that pic, but like, I don't really get the whole package. But I don't really care because mechanically, I think this thing sings, and I really like what it looks like mechanically. Empty, what do you think of this?
Oh man, it's really close to a Hearthstone card.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Like there's one. It's 8 mana 6/6, has the 2 units thing, makes them 1/1s. The only difference is that it doesn't put them into play. It's not like the ongoing static thing. So I don't understand why it has the clause that if you can't draw the units, you create 2 silenced copies of this, because I feel like that's just never going to come up.
Yeah, I agree. It's way fringe, and I mean, so if you are building around making that happen, then you aren't, because that last clause says no. I'm building with a lot of units that I want cheap copies of.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be. Like there's very good targets you can hit with this. Like the trick suit is pretty insane.
Oh yeah.
I think it'll be quite good in those like very slow late game control decks.
I could also definitely see a potential. Obviously, since I'm single player jank guy, I'm gonna take a moment and be single player jank guy. So my recent trinity of just perfect cards to run in shenanigans is Sketch Time Imitator, Wrap Tear, and this. So this is really synergized with Wrap Tear, but with Sketch Time and the potential combo with Door to Elsewhere. Or just Door to Elsewhere, come to think of it. Just, I'm going to draw a bunch of units that aren't copies of things in my hand, and then, I'm just going to build a board in a can for 2 mana once I drop this thing down. So this is really fun. This is potentially really interesting. Flavor-wise, it just doesn't resonate or make much sense to me. But I guess that could work for Lovecraftian horrors. Grief, what do you think?
Why would you want to have engine cards in a deck where you want to draw copies of cards that have immediate impact, regardless of stats?
Oh, because I'm also running Belfry. And I just want as many non-natives as possible. And this helps give me as many non-natives as possible because I'm running the Black Rift deck.
Listen. Deck building 101 is consistency when you're hitting, when you have filtered tutors.
Hold on, guys. We got to stop real quick. Sorry, guys. We had a brief emergency. Something needed to be handled. It's all fixed now. We're all good. Back to the show. Grief, go.
You just cut me off where I actually wanted to give you deck building advice. Where it is regardless of what deck you're building, if you're playing stuff like Simpter, you don't want to pollute your deck with units that you don't want to hit of it. Interesting targets in particular, especially in Legacy, are stuff like the Orchestra, that if you draw 2 copies of it, you put 2 1/1 copies of it into the board. Both players wheel 2 cards from their graveyard and their hand into the deck.
Yeah.
Which targets do you pick, probably? Your Orchestras. Which, by the way, you can also run Simpter together with Dreamer, which then would allow you to draw Dreamers, play them. I don't know, that's probably a little bit too awkward, but on the other hand, this is basically the similar thing with trying to hand loop your opponent, making the best of entrance effects or even agile units that have on-hit effects.
Yeah. Definitely run this with Belfry though, because with Belfry this is pretty fine.
No.
No.
Yes! Because then if you draw your Belfry, you get a baby Belfry that's already a big Belfry.
I think you are the only person under the sun who actually plays Belfry of the Void.
This synergizes with it really good. I don't know.
Okay, last thing before we move on, I want to retract my Hearthstone complaint. They're not actually that similar. This is another card on the Reddit this week that made me hyper aware of these things.
Oh, I see. Okay, fair enough. Dragonfire. So the AC was doing dragons. Dragonfire is a 1-drop strength action from nowhere in particular. If your deck's top card is a dragon, cast Skies Ablaze. If it isn't, scour 3. Skies Ablaze, for those of you who are curious, is deal 1 damage to 3 random enemies. So this is kind of, this is pretty interesting. It gives you a bunch of little random pings, or it gives you a Scouring Orb. So it's a little better than a Scouring Orb, but it actually has an affinity and could provide some interesting tools. Who wants to go first?
Basically, this has no bad effect. Sure, in some situations you probably want to hit Skies Ablaze, but if you're running a dragon deck anyways, you probably set up your deck or top of the deck to manipulate the Dragonfire to the best of your intentions. On the other hand, this is straight up Ruthless support, because Ruthless cares about the amount of Skies Ablaze in your graveyard.
Yeah.
Overall, solid card in both formats, Standard and Legacy.
Great simple comment. I definitely agree. 2 modes, and if you have a way to stack your deck with dragons, this is going to be good. And if not, it's already good because it's Scouring Orb. Empty, what do you think?
And I wish more of our random things work like Skies Ablaze. Such a clean way to make it less random. Yeah, I think this is a perfectly fine card for dragon decks. Like they lack that early game and way to deal with swarms so much that like this is going to be a great tool for them to have.
Not really much to say about it. It is cool, and it's actually doing okay on the sub, sitting at like 9 at the moment. Lich King's Barrow is a 3-drop spirit, 0/5 plays from nowhere in particular. Can attack, ward, and your entomb effects also trigger as summon effects. So I'm going to pretend that this is blocked correctly because I'm already suspicious. No, I guess that makes sense.
It seems pretty easy to block. You just give everything summon, trigger the units into.
Yeah, but at the same time, what happens if you have 2 of these? Because it doesn't say that. It says that entombs also count as summons, not that every time you summon, do the entomb. So even if you go with that, there's still like, I'm just going to trust it for now. I am so surprised this is a Yo-Yo God design and it is not an HPL design, because like this fits in very well with kind of this looks like maybe a Sunken City of R'lyeh parallel or something, or Relay, or however you say it. It's supposed to be hard to say. So, Grief, what do you think of this?
I was confused about the card when I stumbled upon it in Reddit, because I also don't know how it's blocked, but from the implications, I love this to death, considering that this actually makes most of our entombs that really have a hard time actually being pulled off actually usable, and this doesn't have the same issue like Shrine had before, where this is where it is a 3-cost card you won't want to play on turn 3. Play this, and most of our pretty potentially high impact entombs usually start at cost 3, 4, 5, moving onward, or even the entombs on 1 or 2 drops pretty much weave perfectly into it in the next turn, where turn 4 you can actually play 4 units maximum that have very impactful entombs. This can also work and stand up as a pseudo tutor with Chicken Tower, where you play this, play a 0-cost Chicken Tower, which draws your Chicken Tower, which you play a Chicken Tower, which draws you the Chicken Tower, and so on and so forth. This is a very versatile card, and depending on how it is blocked or how it actually manipulates the entomb/summons of your other units, you can have pretty interesting implications for summon retrigger effects.
Yeah.
Overall, solid design.
Yeah, really, really cool, and I could see dozens and dozens of synergies. A lot of this, like, honestly, like in single player, doing shenanigans with like the chase chicken sequence from like the core set can really get crazy, because then you're getting a bunch of like, well, like that was almost exciting to me. Any card that makes units on an Entomb is sort of like a stack effect, where it's just a big stack of units sitting on top of one another, is now immediately going to execute, and you can even get doubles off of it. So that's fun. Okay. Oop, almost fell for that one. Castle is a 2-drop spirit action from nowhere in particular. Shuffle an ally into your deck, put into play a random unit from the deck that costs 1 more, give it ambush. For those of you who are not aware about why this card is doing so poorly, it is because there's another card called Martial Promotion that is famously considered to be more than a little busted, because it serves in a lot of cases as a very, very easy to pull off tutor effect. Do we feel the same about this? Empty, I'll let you go first.
No, this is like Martial Promotion, but if it was bad. Because it costs 2 mana, doesn't have rebound, and that is not even close to worth it to give ambush. I love Martial Promotion, but this needs something to be even close to Martial Promotion's level. Especially because like one of the upsides of Martial Promotion is actually destroyed the unit, so you could get Entombs. It's just like worse than it in every way.
Well, but I mean, the idea is a lot of people felt that Martial Promotion was not very balanced. So maybe at 1, I could see it. If we're going to go with their cave into the pressure that they're providing us with. But of course, they aren't going to be. I think a lot of people are just not going to be happy with any cheap version of this getting in. I like this kind of stuff. This kind of shenanigans is really fun for me. I don't even mind the shuffle, because I can maybe find a way to leverage that, but it's obviously less easy to leverage than an Entomb. But Grief, what do you think?
Persuasion and promo, and in basically all aspects. Promo sacrificed, promo had rebound, promo wasn't red, where the most important targets are actually at. This here's the question: does it care about base cost or normal cost? In that case, maybe you can play around with shifter shenanigans, where you play rebound units. But then again, you're shuffling back cards into your deck, which means that you have a potential to draw them again. Units that you potentially don't want to draw. Because shuffling your deck in a promo setup isn't really good in a case, because you aren't actually controlling where the unit actually goes or where your resources are at the end of the turn. Promo helps a lot out because you can actually, if you cannot Entomb trigger stuff like that, you have a unit that you have in your graveyard that you can potentially use as a resource for later on. Other polymorph effects usually put these cards also either into the remove from game, which you don't really care too much about in case of token designs for or where you can have a mass polymorph effect, or put them specifically in a random order on the bottom of your deck, so you cannot even draw into them again, which is not really the problem with the +1 cost, but still, I don't really want to have the even low potential of, oh yeah, I have this very peculiar target that basically does nothing but is a target to be shuffled back into my deck and draw it off the top of my deck just next turn.
Yeah, so this is kind of the curse of compromise, where like everything that was added to this to make it maybe more appealing to one group ended up making it less appealing to the group that even wanted it. Now it's just unappealing to everyone. I kind of feel that's kind of what happened to this. Who picked it and why? Oh, you picked it,
I picked
Empty.
it. Yeah. Also, don't use ally for this type of effect, because it implies you can use this on your hero.
People need to just stop with that. You don't shuffle heroes into deck. We know how that works. Trust that people can guess.
Funny thing that you could actually make to make this card more interesting is remove ally and just say shuffle a unit back into its owner's deck.
Yeah, that'd be so cool. Oh Oh, man, that would make me like this card so much more. Because if you know what deck your opponent's playing, you could be like, oh, I know they don't have a unit that costs 1 more, so I can use this as a kill spell. Oh, man, that's so cool.
Well, at least you guys aren't just dumping on the card and had a suggestion. I don't know. Hatan, Dragon Whisperer, is a 3-drop neutral 2/3 human dragon with summon. Scour 3. If the top card of your deck is a dragon, create a dragon spirit, which is a 3/2 flyer. So yeah, I was following a little bit of this on the AC. Basically, they didn't want to make it a non-dragon, so it's kind of just got the dragon tribe tacked on, and gives you a scouring orb effect, and gives you a dragon. Just helps build the top of your deck up. MD, what did you want to have to say about this card?
Great idea to help dragons because they desperately need this go wide early game. I think this is too pushed.
Oh, really?
Also, the name is too long.
Yeah.
I hate text bleeding. This is the worst case.
I'm the guy who wanted to spell out 3 on 3 boards taped together.
Yeah. Like at Scour 3, you will basically always hit a dragon for the second effect if you're playing a dragon deck.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 5/5 of stats, half with flying, split across 2 bodies. I think it's like very slightly pushed. I think if you take off like 1 stat point, it would be fine.
Okay, I can see the argument there. How's this sitting? Let me double check. 5, it's doing all right. It could be doing a little bit better. I could see this possibly getting in. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't really know too much about the dragon deck. I do like how it's neutral, so it slots in with a lot of the different existing dragons. And you could also, great tribal tool. Grief, what do you think?
Either reduce the scour to 2, or as MT already mentioned, maybe shave off a stat point from the Whisper itself, so you can actually have a potentially more okay curve card in this case. Since you're not playing this in outside of a dragon deck because you really want that at 3/2 flyer. Overall, pretty okay design, and I can see why this is a dragon, because for the most part, people really hate that our actions that care about the dragons can mishit it themselves, especially with stuff.
Yeah.
Garbage like Eye of the Tyrant. So I'm totally fine with putting dragon on the Dragon Whisperer, but please cut down the name. It's looking so ugly.
It's got the AA just specifically so it bleeds off the thing. The Matryoshka Prison is a 3-drop neutral 0/3 curio object from Carthian. With ambush and entomb, create a small Matryoshka, banish this. Small Matryoshka is a 0/2, similar text. Entomb, create a tiny Matryoshka and banish this. And tiny Matryoshka is a 0/1 with entomb, create Ancient Evil and banish this. And what's an Ancient Evil? Well, that is a 7-drop 7/7 lifebound regenerate. When an ally unit dies, duel an enemy unit and start a turn, get ward. I like this card. I mean, obviously the pixel art. Yeah. So of course I like it. Obviously the pixel art style doesn't really match Carthy, but the idea of the whole cursed curio shop that we already were running, it seemed to fit in really, really nice. And I like the idea of the seemingly innocent thing hiding this horrible thing underneath it. And this is like really, really potentially interesting. So obviously this gives great amount of sack fodder to anything that cares about sack fodder. It gives you 3 blockers you can use that all have ambush. And then what is the payoff on the other end? Well, it's a great sack-based life bond regenerate ward. This thing's going to be creating a lot of problems if you can get to the final stage. Grief, what do you think of this?
For all the hoops that you have to actually jump through to go through 3 stages of Matroshka, an ancient evil with 7/7 stats, life bond and regenerate that just dual stuff is very, very, very bad. This is so anticlimactic in all cases.
So this is coming from the legacy guy, where we know about stuff like Bloodletter, where if I can get some combination of Bloodletter or Martial Promotion, I could see a 7/7 on turn 4 or 5.
Yeah, but the thing is, you Bloodletter once to hyper boost your turn. You don't Bloodletter twice a turn.
No. If I have a Bloodletter and a Martial Promotion, Bloodletter. Get this out. Bloodletter, Martial Promotion, Martial Promotion.
That's so insane. Yeah. So you get. Yeah.
I get a 7/7 for 3.
And you get 2 4-drops.
The thing is, though, you Bloodletter mostly turn 1 to hyperstart stuff like Kazaric on turn 2 or shit like that, which is way better than this.
I like that combo.
I don't know what you're talking about, Grief. In Legacy, maybe. But in Standard, this card is completely
the thing
insane.
the thing is, Stranger basically particularly meant Legacy in that case. Where
in single player, this is great.
In single player, sure, this is great, and Standard, this is probably also pretty fine. But I was looking at it through the lens of Legacy, and oh my god, no! Why would you do that? We have way better sacrifice combos or rebound shenanigans in the format.
There's actually a part where I'm almost a little bit worried about this, and that's specifically in the new Sentinels modes. Because if there's a way for you to recruit any of the token versions of these cards, so like if you could recruit a tiny Matryoshka into your deck, that is bonkers. And I almost hope you could, because that would be a really fun run. Just goofing around with that. MD, what do you think of this?
Yeah, so in Standard, this card is completely busted because it basically is 3 mana. If your opponent's playing aggro, they lose the game. Because you just got a 3 mana. Not only did you just get 3 ambush blockers, which is like, that's okay. But at the end, like, aggro decks cannot deal with something that has life bond, regenerate, and gets ward every single turn.
The thing is, though, this gets ward start of turn, so the moment it gets created, this doesn't have ward.
What are they gonna? They're gonna spend their turn removing what you spent 3 mana for, and then you can run this in oozes and duplicate all the intombs. It's nuts.
I don't know. I would be really interested to see this, specifically for the giant reasons you mentioned, but a lot of people don't like my predilections toward weird combos. So you think this is bad? You think this would actually break Standard as it sits?
Empty think this breaks
No,
Standard.
I think it would only break certain decks, mid-range and aggro. I think Control would be absolutely fine because they're not going to remove this and they don't care.
I think, honestly, one of the good arguments for maybe getting this in is maybe hopefully seeing more banish removal in the game would be nice. If this incentivizes people to run more banish or to build more banish cards and more silence cards, which are tools that a healthy meta should need, I would stand for it. Obviously, I have so many personal reasons to get this in, and I just think it's cute.
It's cute. It's just slow.
Yeah. And our final card is Flame Jet is a 2-drop strength action from Gurmel, Land of Frost and Fire.
Why are you saying Gurmel? It's Gemmel.
It's Gemmel?
Yeah.
There's no R in the name.
No, but like I don't know. I don't know how I work. I don't need to explain myself to you, Grief, and I never have. I thought it was supposed to be foreign, Grief. I'm also tired. We said that at the beginning of the episode. You owe me a pass. Scour 3 and deal damage equal to the amount of cards banished. Did we not get the card that does this on summon in?
That's it. I think that's it.
There was like a card, I think it was a unit that did exactly this on summon.
It wasn't damage though. It got a plus attack.
Oh, okay. So this is going to be kind of their little sub theme, is burning your whole deck away. Doing a good Scour synergy. I like this. For those who like Scour, I have predilections against it, but I think it's an interesting deck idea. I definitely like this more than the idea of like losing max mana. I would actually be willing to run this, whereas Dwarves, just so unappealing to me, I could never see myself doing it. Grief, what do you think of it?
You don't like dwarves?
I don't like losing resources. Even to gain resources. It's a psychological thing. It's not a like actually knowing how the game works thing, because I know those strategies work. Anyways, Grief, go.
Love this card. I love exhaust decks in any kind of games, even in stuff like Slay the Spire, etc. So basically gaining benefits from choosing to get rid of resources in your deck. Just nice. Also, maybe you can combo this off with cards that want to be banished in your deck, which we only
like the
have
Null Phoenix or whatever.
one instance of, and it's not really good. But maybe this opens the door to actually design more in that way.
That would actually be, I think, really flavorful for Gemmel or whatever. Is doing maybe a couple cards that like explode when they're scoured away. That could be fun.
You said one pass.
FT, go.
Yeah, I'm sort of conflicted on this card because I love this idea for an archetype. It's really, really cool, where you have to balance this thing between how much damage or how much attack you want to give your unit, and if there's a card you really want, if you want to keep that on top of your deck. On the other hand, this is just strength fireball, but almost always better, which like I'm not a huge fan of. But this archetype is cool enough that I'm willing to let it slide. I'd be fine if it got in.
Yeah, that's the thing I definitely had to say about this, is even though this is not the kind of card I like to play, this is the kind of card I'm excited to see in the game. And so that's why I really like this. This is potentially really cool. And I'm just realizing how badly I misread the art. I was interpreting the little yellow dot as an eye of like a creature, and I'm realizing that that's just a hand with a ring on it. Thought it was a little snake boy going whoop. No, this is good. I like this. Okay, now actually I guess that's the end of the week. Sorry guys for the interruption earlier. I'm probably not going to crop that out so you guys will all know what I'm talking about. This is a good week. Sorry we didn't have a guest on. We'll also probably have a guest on next week. It was just kind of a hectic thing going on with me. Start of the spring break and whatnot.
People being tired.
And being tired. Thank you as always to Grief for being on the show.
I'm always glad to be here, even though I'm in Spain when the S is silent.
Oh, poor Grief. And thank you as always to Empty Folder.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Your closet's open this time.
Yeah.
Is it empty?
So anyways, like, comment, and subscribe. Remind me why I'm doing this, and keep on playing the game. Keep on voting on cards. Bye.